Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me here today. Please bear with me. My little bundle of joy is leaving me a little bit out of breath these days, so I apologize if I stumble a little bit as I go. But anyway, without further ado, if I can have this. Got it. Thank you. All right. All right, so I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about the FTC and advertising law generally, and then a little bit about environmental marketing and how that plays into what we do at the FTC. So, just as an overview of where I'm going, just going to talk a little bit about the FTC, then we'll talk about the 2012 Green Guides, which I think a lot of you are familiar with. And just the general caveat I always have to give, everything I say today is my opinion only. I can't bind the commission or any commissioner. So without further ado, so what is the FTC? The FTC is an independent regulatory agency, and we enforce the FTC Act, specifically Section 5 of the FTC Act. Okay. Sorry about all of this. Section 5 of the FTC Act declares unlawful, unfair, or deceptive acts or practices in or affecting commerce. That's extraordinarily broad. We have authority over almost every sector of the economy, so very, very broad. And so you may ask, well, what does that mean, and how do I apply that in practice? Well, essentially, what it means is tell the truth in your advertising. We are the nation's truth and advertising agency, so make sure that for any claim that you make, you have substantiation. You need to be able to back up a reasonable consumer's takeaway from your ads, from your claims in context, on your marketing materials, on your product packaging. So in the green context, what that means is competent and reliable scientific evidence. That's the standard for substantiation. The green guides are not independently enforceable. They're an administrative interpretation of Section 5 as it applies to environmental benefit claims. So the green guides help marketers comply. So just a few basics about the green guides. Essentially, our touchstone in everything we do is how do consumers understand the claim? When a consumer looks at your claim, what is the consumer taking away from that? We're not as interested in environmental standards, environmental policy. My boss likes to say that we are agnostic when it comes to the environment. We are only interested in preventing consumer deception. So always something to keep in mind no matter what the claim is that you're making. The green guides apply to all forms of marketing claims. Business to business, business to consumer, all covered under the green guides. And again, I can't say it too many times. Purpose is to prevent consumer deception, not to set environmental policy. So a few general principles that underlie the green guides and FTC practice generally. Again, consumer perception controls. That's always going to be the first question. When a consumer looks at this claim, how does the consumer understand it? So you may ask as a marketer, what can I do to control consumer perception? How do I know what a consumer thinks when they look at my claim? Well, the more specific you are in the marketing claim, the less likely it is that a consumer is going to look at your claim and take away something that's very different from what you intended. So be specific. Don't overstate the environmental benefits of your product. I like to give the example of a marketer that says, our product now has twice as much recycled content as the previous version. Well, think about a marketer that went from 1% recycled content to 2%. Yeah, literally true, twice as much recycled content. But in most instances, a consumer is going to look at that claim and take away a much broader environmental benefit. So don't overstate your claims. Be clear. Use prominent and understandable qualifications that guide consumer understanding. So if you make a claim and you're concerned about how a consumer is going to understand it, qualify that claim. Make sure the qualification is readable. Make sure it's in text big enough that the consumer can notice it and see it. The Green Guides, in addition to giving general advice and explaining a little bit about the FTC Act, do give specific advice about a number of environmental benefit claims. I've splashed them up here on the slide. Just so you know, as a reference, these are the specific claims that are covered. You may notice a real omission here from your perspective of folks that work in organic, which is organic claims are not specifically covered under the Green Guides at this point. There are two reasons for that. One, as you know, the National Organic Program currently regulates these claims for organic products, and the FTC was concerned about introducing advice that might overlap or be contradictory. So that was one reason. The other one was we requested consumer perception evidence, so evidence of how consumers understand organic claims, and didn't receive any. So we didn't have enough information to give generally applicable guidance on how consumers understand organic claims. So what is a marketer to do? Well, a couple points to make here. First of all, marketers making organic claims or any marketing claims are subject to the FTC's general prescriptions on unfair and deceptive marketing claims. So the general principles that we've been talking about today still apply. Second, the FTC can always bring an enforcement action regardless of whether the claim is specifically covered in the Green Guides or not. So just because organic is not specifically addressed doesn't mean that the commission couldn't bring a case. And so, again, refer back to the general principles in the Green Guides for a little bit of help. I know people are interested in the Federal Register notice that went out not too long ago discussing the possibility of internet-based research into organic claims. This is something that's just in its very early stages. There's really nothing much that I can tell you about this proposed survey except that it's possible consumer perception study that would be done in the fairly near future, just to explore consumer understanding of claims like organic and recycled content. There is an opportunity for public comment right now that's going on. There will be more opportunities for public comment, and that's really all I can say about that at this point. So I wanted to just take a moment to talk about a few specific principles that are addressed in the guides that might help you. Even though I can't really give you much specific on organic, I wanted to touch on a few other things. So first, those of you that make general environmental benefit claims for your product, things like green, eco-friendly. Just want to make a note that in the revised guides, we give pretty strong advice about these claims. When we did our previous round of consumer perception testing, we found that consumers looking at these claims had a wide variety of takeaways that didn't necessarily match with what marketers were trying to convey. In addition, there was a significant minority, almost 30% of consumers, who looked at these claims and thought that they meant that the products had no negative environmental impact whatsoever. Well, we all know that there is really probably no product that has no negative impact whatsoever. So the guides say it's highly unlikely that marketers can substantiate all of a consumer's reasonable takeaways from these claims. So no unqualified general environmental benefit claims. Qualifying those claims, so saying something like eco-friendly recyclable, specifically identifying what it is about your product that makes it eco-friendly or green, might work in some instances if you qualify in a clear and prominent way, if you limit your claim to a specific benefit, and that again, the context of your claim doesn't overstate the environmental benefit of your product. Also want to call your attention to a new section in the Green Guides on certifications, logos, and seals. For those of you that use these, just a few things to note. A certification or a seal is an endorsement, so the FTC's endorsement guides apply. What those say in this context is if there's a material connection between the certifier and the certified party, that needs to be disclosed. A material connection is essentially one that a consumer wouldn't anticipate, but it's not the payment of a reasonable fee for certification. Note that you need substantiation for claims that are conveyed by your seals and certifications. So beware for ones that might convey a general environmental benefit claim, because then you'll tingle with that advice that we were talking about earlier. A case to just mention briefly, fairly recent enforcement action in 2011 against a certifier called Tested Green. What Tested Green did is basically they certified anybody, including the FTC, as green if you paid a fee. So problem from our perspective, they weren't independently evaluating anybody or doing anything except for taking people's money. So just a case to mention. All right. I think free of claims are probably things that come up for some of you in some instances. I know we're very short on time, so I won't take a lot of time with this. But just note that sometimes a free of claim can still be deceptive if a product, so if you remove a substance from a product, but you substitute in a substance that causes the same or similar environmental harm, that could be deceptive. So you say chlorine-free, but your product still has another substance that causes the same harm, that could deceive consumers. Additionally, if you make a free of claim for a substance never associated with your product, that could deceive consumers. We've seen that. So the guides also introduced a new 3-part test for when you can make a free of claim for products that still contain a trace amount of a substance. That's splashed up there for those of you who are interested. I won't take the time to go over it, but there have been a few recent enforcement actions about free of claims that may be of some interest. We had a series of paint cases, and then last fall, there was a case having to do with mattress companies making no VOC claims. Just to call that to your attention, they were also using a seal that was problematic from our perspective, one of the companies. So just a recent enforcement example that may be of some interest to some out there. Non-toxic, probably another one that some of you encounter. Just note that non-toxic in our testing conveys a very wide range of things to consumers. A lot of consumers, when they look at a non-toxic claim, take away the message that the product is non-toxic, both for humans and the environment. That's very, very broad takeaway. So unless you can substantiate that, it's often a good idea to qualify your non-toxic claim. Of course, for more information, please feel free to visit our website. We're always happy to answer questions and talk to folks that have questions in this area. So trying to keep it very short, make sure we have time for questions today. Oh, sure.
Hi, first off, congratulations on the baby.
Thank you.
A comment and then a question. The comment is we are begging you to come up with an enforcement and pursue these violators. The organic market is growing like crazy, and the worst thing that could sidetrack it are companies that claim to be organic that really aren't, or that claim their products are organic that really aren't. So whether it's a mattress or shampoo or whatever it is, we desperately need you to be aggressive and come up with a way to regulate those false claims, because it's crucial. The public, it's a matter of trust for them. And if they don't have that matter of trust, it's going to knock our growth off track. So it's crucial for all of us. Second question, as far as enforcement, let's say there's some habitual offenders out there, whatever your industry is, and they keep making bogus claims and they keep improperly using seals and all this good stuff. What do you feel is the best way for us to report that to you? Do you want it to come from a consumer? Do you want it to come from an attorney? Do you want it to come from a company? What would best get your attention and get you to act on those violators?
Yeah, great question, and interesting, because I was going to respond to the first part of what you said by answering the second question you posed. So I was going to respond to the first part by saying, if you all have examples of habitual offenders or people that you think are making egregious, deceptive claims, please let us know about those. You're in the best position to know what your competitors are up to know what's going on out there on the ground. So do let us know about that. There are a few options for complaining to us. You can always contact one of us directly. You can always email me. My email address is just my first initial and last name, so JENSOR at ftc.gov. So I or any of my colleagues can handle those complaints. You can complain through the FTC website at ftc.gov. That's a spot to complain. It will often lead to a slower response just because you have to go through channels when you do that. So that's an option too. But as far as whether it comes from you, comes from a consumer, comes from an attorney, it doesn't really matter. I mean, the more information that you can give us, obviously, the more helpful that is. But the person conveying the information, doesn't really matter.
Thanks, Alan Lewis from Natural Grocers. Really great you're here today. Really important. We all have a love-hate relationship with the regulators, as Tom Vilsack knows. I think in this case, it's all love, so thank you.
Oh, glad to hear that.
So we all operate in this market where we have competing products that want to bask in the glow of the organic standard without doing the hard work to meet it. And a particular claim that I think degrades the organic brand is tested for antibiotic residue. They don't say what test, they don't say what tolerances, they don't say what the results were, but it's been tested. So without asking for an opinion from you, has the FTC pursued that particular claim, or do you think that it would? Thank you.
Well, of course, the existence of any investigation or non-existence of any investigation at the FTC is not public information, so I can't really respond to that. What I can say is for claims like that are specific, that we don't necessarily know much about, that aren't covered under the green guides, again, our question would be, how does a consumer look at that claim and how does the consumer understand it? So I think for us to proceed on a tested claim like that, we might need consumer perception evidence. We might need someone to tell us, here's what this claim is and here's what consumers are taking away. This is why it's deceptive. Because we can't just decide sua sponte that consumers interpret something in a particular way. So it might be a little bit difficult for us to move forward without that information.
You have time for one more?
Sure.
So one of the big problems that we've seen is the labeling of organic soil media, organic pesticides, organic fertilizer with sludge as the nitrogen source, which is prohibited under the National Organic Program. Is that y'all's responsibility, and can you fix it?
So as I mentioned, there are certainly areas that are covered by National Organic Program, and we are, in all likelihood not going to step into those areas in most instances. As to whether that specific example is covered by USDA or whether that's something that we would look into, I simply don't know. I'd have to learn a little bit more about it. I can take one more if...
Thank you. The USDA does not have the authority to deal with non-agricultural products. So at the same time, the USDA has acknowledged the GOTS program, Global Organic Textile Standard, for non-agricultural products. Are you comfortable with that? Will you back that up? In other words, if there are companies who are making products and calling it organic, they need to be certified under the GOTS program. And if they're not, are you prepared to deal with that?
So we're always guided by consumer perception, and sometimes those programs might not always match up from our perspective with consumer perception. And anytime we're looking into a case, looking into a matter, and deciding whether to proceed, the question from our perspective is, are consumers being deceived by these claims? So regarding whether consumers are deceived by products labeled organic under GOTS, I don't know that. I don't know. I'd have to see testing. I'd have to really delve into the standard and understand it. So I'm sorry I can't answer that today.
Thank you so much.